Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now Bureau at KSC. I, however, am joining you remotely from Brownsville, Texas, as I'm still down here post the launch of SpaceX's Starship Flight 5 mission. Be returning to Florida in the near future. So we are coordinating this partially local, partially remote coverage, but good to be with you as always for commentary purposes. Hope you're all having a good start to the work week. Appreciate you joining us for this lunchtime launch of a Falcon Heavy rocket. Currently T-minus 1 hour, 9 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. You can see there's a little bit of venting from the strong back, and of course, the Super Heavy booster there on your screen. A mark of success for SpaceX as they were able to successfully catch the Super Heavy booster B-12 following separation from the Starship upper stage during yesterday's historic Flight 5. Want to thank all of you who were there with us for that coverage. And a big thank you to our partners, Lab Padre, who are providing this current view of the Super Heavy booster. Our Adam Bernstein still on the ground with me here in Texas. He's actually should be on the road right now as we speak, going out to retrieve some of the cameras he's set for remote coverage of this mission. So keep your eyes peeled for some new photos from Adam, both on his social channel as well as ours, as we'll be able to share some photos from a little bit closer to liftoff coming up in the next few hours here. If you're not already following our photography team, you can find them here on their channels on X. Adam Bernstein, aforementioned, still here with me in Texas. He's at A Burn NYC. Michael Kane, though, with folks there in Florida. You can find him at MT Kane Jr. He's set remote shots for this Falcon Heavy launch that we've got on tap coming up in just a little more than an hour. He's also helping out Stephen with some behind the scenes things. And of course, our Stephen Young is running the technical operations of this broadcast. Our friends Pete Carson's with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images are also on tap with us here in Florida to be able to support launch coverage and tracking of the Falcon Heavy rocket. It's a beautiful day here in the Sunshine State, certainly living up to its name. 45th Weather Squadron forecast a just 5% chance of violating weather for today's launch. Put another way, 95% go conditions for the liftoff of this triple booster rocket. As you can tell from this angle, a little bit of soot still on some of the boosters here. Those two side cores are going to be making their sixth and final flights here. And if you take a really close look near the top of the boosters, there on your right-hand side of the strong back from this perspective, you can see that there are no hypersonic grid fins. There are no landing legs. That's because all three boosters today are going to be expended. This is a unique mission that requires the full power of a Falcon Heavy rocket. And as SpaceX said yesterday, what better way to expend some boosters than with a planetary mission, which will send a spacecraft called Europa Clipper farther than any other object launched by SpaceX to date. Europa Clipper will embark on a 5.5-year journey to perform a series of flybys around, of course, the planet Jupiter, but focusing on its icy ocean moon called Europa, the namesake, of course, for this mission. Clipper will perform about 50 orbits around Jupiter and Europa as the nominal path for this mission. This type of operation, the Europa Clipper mission, its imaginings go all the way back to the late 90s, around 1997, towards the end of the life of the Galileo spacecraft. Mission first recommended by the National Research Council back in 2013. As happens with these big discovery missions, though, the costs did balloon quite notably from an early estimate of about $2 billion. Current total mission life cycle, so from development to launch and through the coverage of this mission throughout the course of its life, is estimated at about $5.2 billion. A key part of the Science Mission Directorate, though, as the Europa Clipper seeks to get really close looks at Europa and help determine if Europa contains what scientists believe is the case, are the building blocks potentially for life beyond Earth, or at least potentially life that was. As we're getting underway with our coverage, certainly want to thank the more than 1,700 of you who are joining with us live as we're getting things going here. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button if you would be so kind. It allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage this morning. And it's always very much appreciated. Want to thank our moderators in the live chat for helping us out today. Our thanks to Aussie Space Girl as well as to Clisty Lee. See a Coast Guard chopper flying just in the background of that shot, making sure, of course, that things are clear. There are no watercraft along the Ascent corridor for this mission and inside the keep out zone. We have a wonderful channel member community that supports us here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Cumulus Grantis, the Rocket Girl, Sulfur for Lunch, Kimberly Ruel, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos, and of course, the ability to watch all of our launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. And a good morning to some other folks popping in. I'm Lita, and see Carlos joining us. Good morning to you both. The journey of the Europa Clipper spacecraft will take it about 1.8 billion miles from Earth. It's got quite the journey to get out there. We'll talk more about that as we continue on through the count. But last but not least, just one more piece of housekeeping. If you have a comment or question about today's mission or other happenings in space, or just have a comment that's appropriate they'd like to make, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about during this countdown timeline, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now. And on weeks and weekends, which involve big launch coverage, as we've just been, well, I shouldn't say just been, we're still wrapping up our coverage out here in Texas. So hitting the road is not a easier or cheap endeavor. And so we certainly appreciate your support in making on the ground journalism like this happen. And we thank you for your support. Speaking of super chats, want to thank Mary Robinson, my mother, joining us this morning. A very generous $20 super chat. And hello to you, Mom, in California. Who in turn says, good morning, Texas/Florida. If you haven't already, go ahead and hop in the live chat. Let us know where you're watching from today. And I will echo the comment made by one of our moderators, Clistia Lee, that this is an apolitical YouTube channel. I know there obviously is the presidential election that is highlighting these last few weeks before in-person voting begins. However, again, this channel is about space and space flight and science. And we respectfully ask that you refrain from delving into politics in the live chat. Otherwise, that's a quick way to get your message deleted. And our mods are quick on the draw. So just a heads up on that. Also, if you would please refrain from using all caps, that'll also get you a quick censor. So no shouting via text, and everything will be hunky-dory here. Appreciate everyone for being on board. We are currently T minus 59 minutes, 19 seconds and counting. So far, things are progressing well towards an on-time liftoff of the Falcon Heavy rocket this morning. As we are progressing through the timeline here, let's go ahead and take a look, talk about what's ahead for this mission as NASA and SpaceX continue to count down towards the launch of the Europa Clipper spacecraft. We are coming up on the start of fueling. That's set to begin just a few minutes here, T minus 53 minutes. The SpaceX launch director will verify that they're go to proceed into propellant load. This, of course, being a Falcon Heavy rocket, a bit of a different timeline than we're used to for typical Falcon 9. Fueling begins with RP1 on the Falcon Heavy first stage, so all three of those boosters. That's that rocket-grade kerosene. Starts at T minus 50 minutes, followed 5 minutes later by first stage liquid oxygen loading on board the Falcon 9 or Falcon Heavy's first stage. RP1 for the second stage begins loading at T minus 35 minutes, followed by a second stage RP1 loading being complete at T minus 20 minutes, 30 seconds. Second stage LOX load begins at T minus 18 minutes and 30 seconds. Before second stage LOX load begins, though, of course, they will chill the feed lines. We'll see that evidenced by the so-called big vent. Comes a few minutes earlier than a Falcon 9 launch, so keep your eyes peeled for that. It'll be a good sign that fueling is continuing on track. About T minus 10 minutes, the Europa Clipper spacecraft begins to shift to internal power. Then at T minus 7 minutes, the Falcon Heavy engine chill down process begins. That involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps on the three boosters, Falcon 9 engine or Falcon engines. Being that there are three boosters, each with 9 Merlin 1D engines apiece, you got 27 at the base of the rocket, and then 1 Merlin vacuum engine on the Falcon Heavy's second stage.
Copies. The NASA Europa Clipper team is go for propellant load and go for launch.
We did just hear the poll that they're ready to step into prop load. So that being the NASA team taking that poll. SpaceX team will take their poll in just a couple of minutes, as I just mentioned. T minus 4 minutes, 30 seconds. The strong back retract sequence will begin. Starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings at the top of the Falcon Heavy rocket opening up and then retracting about a degree and a half away from the rocket. Stays in that position until liftoff, at which point it pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon Heavy. T minus 3 minutes. The first stage lock slope is complete. Same on the second stage, about T minus 2 minutes. T minus 59 seconds. The computer will begin its final pre-launch checks. After that, the SpaceX launch director will verify that they are a go for launch. T minus 20 seconds. The propellant tanks are pressurized for flight using cryogenic helium. The engine controller will give their ignition command at T minus 6 seconds. And if all 27 Merlin 1D engines at the base of the Falcon Heavy rocket are healthy and ignite, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon Heavy rocket for a teaser liftoff coming up at 12:06 p.m. Eastern, 16:06 UTC, in 53 minutes, 22 seconds. In support of today's mission, the Brevard County Emergency Operations Center has activated their launch operations support team, as they do for every plan to launch of a rocket here on the Space Coast. Brevard EOC, one of the busiest in the country because of the rocket activity here at the Cape, in addition to, of course, all the other severe weather related or other potential response needs that they fulfill. Of course, this always keeps them busy at a pretty regular clip. In fact, just as a note for today's launch, this will be SpaceX's 96th orbital launch between both the Kennedy Space Center, Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, and then Cape Canaveral Space Force Station back here in Florida. For those keeping track, SpaceX launched a total of 96 orbital launches in all of last year. Of course, they also launched a couple of Starship missions too, but we are, for the sake of this statistic, just talking about orbital launches. So with this mission, they will tie the total of last year and prepare to surpass that pretty quickly. As soon as tomorrow, there are two Falcon 9 launches with batches of Starlink satellites that are scheduled to lift off, one from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, the other over at Slick 4E or Slick 4 East over at Vandenberg. Like more information about those, we've got the times up on our schedule currently. If you go to spaceflightnow.com, just click on the launch schedule tab. We're currently at T minus 49 minutes, 37 seconds and counting. First stage RP1 loading has begun. The next fueling milestone we're tracking is first stage LOX load to begin. It's coming up at T minus 45 minutes. The Europa Clipper spacecraft was encapsulated into the Falcon Heavy payload fairings ahead of landfall of Hurricane Milton. And of course, the intention was to launch it back on October 10th, but the hurricane obviously presented some challenges to doing that. You're taking a look at the spacecraft prior to its encapsulation, one of those Falcon Heavy payload fairings there in the background. Fully fueled, the spacecraft is about 5,700 kilograms, or a little more than 12,500 pounds. Nearly half the weight of the spacecraft is the propellant that will keep it going throughout the course of its mission life. Again, once Clipper launches, it will take about 5.5 years for it to reach its destination of Europa. With its solar panels extended, you can see this is a real world photo of the extension of the solar panels, and I'll show you a video of some of that testing in just a little bit here. Here's a good sense of the scale of Clipper with both of its solar panels extended. It's a little bit longer than a regulation basketball court, according to NASA. The agency clocks its wingspan of more than 100 feet, or about 30 meters. Here's a look at the orbit that it will fly. It will make some pretty low passes when it comes to its 50 orbits around Jupiter and getting pretty close to Europa itself. Of course, any mission like this, they will take a look once the nominal mission has run its course and see if there's going to be an extension possible of it. But as of right now, Europa Clipper is scheduled to make about 50 flybys around its namesake moon. At its closest approach, it'll be about 25 kilometers or about 16 miles above the surface of Europa. So able to get some pretty detailed images of it. Spacecraft has a whole host of science instruments that'll be used to gather key data on the moon of Europa. Now, T minus 43 minutes, 40 seconds. At this stage, the first stage LOX load should be complete or beginning. Now currently at T minus 42 minutes and counting. Worth noting that because SpaceX has begun fueling the Falcon Heavy rocket at this point, if something were to come up, a technical issue that would cause them to stand down from a launch today because of the amount of propellant used on the Falcon Heavy and the liquid oxygen, they would need to stand down for a 48-hour recycle, not a 24-hour recycle. In the event that that were to happen, then the plan would likely see SpaceX move forward with its Falcon 9 launches tomorrow, as was described during a pre-launch teleconference by Tim Dunn, who's the senior launch director for NASA's Launch Services Program, which is based at the Kennedy Space Center and is the part of NASA that's responsible for procuring launch services, as the name suggests. Currently T minus 40 minutes and counting. First off, I want to thank the now more than 3,700 of you who are joining with us live. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us, allow some more folks to find their way in here. And want to thank a few individuals for your direct support. Welcome aboard to John, Paul, Wakamatsu joining us with channel membership at the mission specialist level. Appreciate that, John. Glad to have you with us. Our thanks as well to Super Tech Boy for $2 super chat, one of our channel members, going to my coffee or caffeinated beverage fund. Yeah, to not plug a specific brand, I do have an energy drink on tap. It's been a busy time down here in Texas, so gotta have something to keep it going, right? Thanks as well to Lita for a $5 super chat saying, so glad we're all together again. I was concerned about my Spaceflight Now family last week. Thanks for all you do, Will. Well, thanks for the kind thoughts, Lita. We're all good here. All of our respective dwellings in Florida are still standing. Minimal to no damage for the team here, so that's all been good. Josh King, been a member for 24 months, saying it's been amazing being part of this channel for the last 2 years, watching all these launches. Thanks, Will, and the Space Flight Now team for all your hard work. Well, thank you for your ongoing support of what we do here, Josh. We're very much reliant on longstanding channel members, and of course, we welcome any and all new ones as well. Big thanks to the Rocket Girl, another one of our wonderful channel members, with a very generous 20 Canadian dollars super chat, saying, good morning, Will. Thank you for all the great coverages. So happy to be here for the Falcon Heavy, and thank you to the whole Spaceflight Now team. Good launch, everybody. And yes, that is our hope, that we see in now just a hair under 38 minutes, a good launch of the Falcon Heavy rocket. And if all continues on track, today and tomorrow, we'll see SpaceX launch its full gamut of launch vehicles, from Starship to Falcon Heavy to Falcon 9. Finally, for now, thanks to Don Pierce for a $2 super chat. We'll come back to the live chat in just a little bit. Currently, T minus 37 minutes, 17 seconds, and counting. Again, the next fueling milestone that we're looking for here is second stage RP1, or rocket grade kerosene loading, set to begin at T minus 35 minutes, so just about 2 minutes from now. While SpaceX is not intending to recover either the side boosters or the center core, they will be endeavoring to recover the payload fairings. SpaceX saves about $6 million per recovery effort. And so it's an important part of their business model to retrieve those as much as possible. Copy. Currently T minus 35 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. After the Falcon Heavy rocket lifts off, of course, the two side boosters will fall away, and then the center booster will continue to burn for a little bit, leading up to stage separation, and the upper stage will take over. Just listening in, hearing from NASA's Daryl Nail that there are currently no major issues being worked on the Falcon Heavy rocket or the spacecraft, which is certainly good news. Now T minus 33 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. Did get confirmation from NASA that RP1 loading is underway. That being on the second stage. The next fueling milestone coming up will be at T minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds for stage 2 RP1 loading being complete. Following stage separation, let's go ahead and look at this mission animation from NASA and the flight path of the Europa Clipper spacecraft once it begins its journey. As the payload fairings separate, we'll expose the Europa Clipper spacecraft to the vacuum of space for the first time on the mission. Again, this is an animation from NASA of this mission profile. Following stage separation, it takes a few minutes to establish a good connection with the spacecraft. As you're seeing here, and as was described by the mission manager, Jordan Evans, the project manager, it'll do this rotation maneuver, which he described as rotating like a rotisserie. And that's in order to warm up the spacecraft evenly. And then they'll begin this process of solar array deployment. It takes about 30 minutes to go through this process where, as Evans described it, they use what are called thermal knives to cut the solar array restraints. They begin with 8 of those restraints on each side and then cut the final 9th on each side at the very end of that, again, roughly 30-minute process. The timing of this comes about 3.5 hours after launch. And we'll deploy this antenna you see here, and then it's ready to begin the course of its 5.5-year journey as it's departing Earth. Currently T minus 30 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. Once the Europa Clipper spacecraft is ready to depart Earth, some of the big milestones include a Mars gravity assist. This swing is set to come around March 1st of 2025. You should see that coming up in the animation shortly, just doing a 360 around the spacecraft to show what it looks like when it's fully in its deployed state. Sort of a planetary overview of the Europa Clipper mission. You can see there's the beginning of the Mars gravity assist. It's illustrated there, and you'll see a little animated version of Europa Clipper make the swing by the red planet. Again, this comes up on March 1st of 2025. And while Europa Clipper is set to depart the surface of the Earth today, it'll actually make a brief return to our little planet here. And that's coming up for an Earth gravity assist, which is set for December of 2026. And then after that Earth gravity assist, then it will spend the remainder of the time until April 11th of 2030 going through its coast out to Jupiter and of course its ocean moon of Europa. You can see that represented in this animation here. Now T minus 27 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. I want to thank the more than 5,400 of you who are now joining with us live. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button to allow some more folks to be able to find this live coverage. Certainly appreciated. Taking a look at the live chat. Want to thank channel member Josh King for a $10 super chat. Appreciate that, Josh. Says, even though no boosters will be getting recovered today, I'm still recovering after seeing that booster catch of the Super Heavy yesterday. Completely outstanding. Go Falcon Heavy and Europa Clipper. And yeah, let us know if you were with us yesterday for our coverage of Starship Flight 5. What stood out to you from that mission? Was it the obvious, the catch, the return of the Super Heavy booster? Was it seeing the views on the Starship upper stage as it went through its coast phase and then made its way down to a pretty much precision landing in the waters of the Indian Ocean? Precision to the point that SpaceX's deployed buoy that was out there was able to capture video of it making its aquatic splashdown. Also want to thank Tobe Wobe for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. To our newest 5 channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Tobe in the live chat, and we hope you stick around with us. Currently T minus 24 minutes, 2 seconds and counting. With today's flight, we're looking forward to the 11th time that a Falcon Heavy rocket takes flight. Here's a look at all the previous Falcon Heavy missions that have come before it. Of course, the demo mission back on February 6, 2018 saw SpaceX launch Elon Musk's Tesla Roadster off with pretty stellar soundtrack. Since then, the Falcon Heavy rocket has launched a series of missions, both commercial as well as for the U.S. government, both on the defense side as well as for NASA. The last time that these side boosters flew, though, was back on October 13th of 2023. Actually, I was just double checking my notes. They actually flew on the December 28th, 2023 mission supporting USSF 52, but it was almost a year ago to the day the last time they supported a launch for NASA. That was NASA's Psyche mission, set to rendezvous with a metal-rich asteroid of the same name. The first time that anyone has explored a metal-rich asteroid up close before. Psyche spacecraft should be reaching its namesake asteroid around 2029. Seeing the so-called big vent from the strong back there as the feed lines are being chilled at the pad prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. Good sign that fueling is on track with this Falcon Heavy mission today.
Stage 2 RP1 load is complete.
Did you hear the call just now that stage 2 RP1 load is complete?
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
As you just heard, stage two Lockstone has uh, is underway. Currently T minus 17 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. I want to take a spin around the Europa Clipper spacecraft. Again, this is a NASA animation that you're seeing here. There are a series of 9 science instruments on board the Europa Clipper spacecraft. So you're seeing those labeled as we hop around here. Try to keep them on screen as best I can and relay what we're seeing here. So just going around the horn, I'll just kind of rattle them off and you can be looking for them as I'm talking about them. We're going to cycle that video back. It's on a loop, I believe. Steven's working on that. So there are a couple of cameras on board Europa Clipper. One is the Europa Imaging System, or the EIS, which you see labeled right there. The other is the Europa Thermal Imaging System, Thermal Emission Imaging System, the ETHEMIS, which uses infrared light to identify warmer spots on Europa where warm water may be close to the surface or have erupted. It's got a couple of spectrometry instruments as well, the Europa Ultraviolet Spectrograph, or the Europa UVS, as well as the Mapping Imaging Spectrometer for Europa, or the MISE instrument. MISE will, according to NASA, map the distribution of ices, salts, organics, and the warmest hotspots on Europa, helping scientists have a better picture of the moon's geologic history. And again, another piece of the puzzle on if the ocean moon is potentially hospitable for life. It's got a couple of instruments that will help identify the plasma and magnetic field. When we saw the deployment of that boom, that was the Europa Clipper magnetometer, or the ECM. Also features the plasma instrument for magnetic sounding, or PIMS. A couple more sets of instruments here. 2 for radar and gravity. Europa Clipper is equipped with a gravity/radio science instrument, as well as a radar for Europa assessment and sounding, ocean to near surface, or REASON, as of course NASA and its partners love these acronyms. Finally, there's a couple of instruments designed to assess Europa's chemical analysis. Those are the Mass Spectrometer for Planetary Exploration/Europa, shorthand MASSPEX. Finally, there is the Surface Dust Analyzer, the acronym SUDA. According to NASA, as tiny meteorites eject bits of Europa's surface into space, and a subsurface ocean or reservoirs might vent material into space as plumes. The dust analyzer will identify that material's chemistry and area of origin and offer clues to Europa's ocean salinity. Now, T minus 13 minutes, 13 seconds and counting to the planned launch of Europa Clipper. Aboard a Falcon Heavy rocket, fueling continues to move along on track here. Next milestone we're looking for is for the spacecraft itself to shift to internal power. It's coming up at T minus 10 minutes. Now that we have mission audio established and able to be shared out, you should hear the remaining callouts as they happen. We will endeavor to not be talking over them so that we can all hear them together. Taking a quick look at the live chat here. First off, I want to thank the 9,600 of you who are joining with us live. Appreciate you being here on a Monday uh, late morning, cruising on into early afternoon, the lunching hour. Want to welcome Jesse Hain joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Thank you, Jesse, for being with us. Skunk Hogger PS4, the $10 super chat, one of our channel members saying, talking about Starship Flight 5, saying the catch. That was the moment yesterday. Glad everyone's okay downstate. Pardon me. Skunk also adds the Yorkie pack, and I survived Helene, no damage other than having to clean up the yard again. It's good to hear. And Mitchell Wilbur with a very generous $50 super chat. Really appreciate that, Mitchell. Thanks for supporting us at that level. Who says, really like this channel and the people that make it happen and keep it about spaceflight. There's plenty of places for all that other nonsense. Thanks, guys. Well, we certainly appreciate the kind words, Mitchell. And one of the wonderful things about being a part of the space ecosystem, as far as on the media side, is there's a lot of different outlets and a lot of different ways to cover and talk about space. And we pride ourselves here at Spaceflight now for the way that we approach our coverage from a journalistic lens and keeping things focused on the mission at hand, but also taking time to be with all of you and talk about what's on your mind. Again, trying to keep it in the lens of spaceflight and what's happening here, but I always appreciate your comments and insight. Taking a look here at the payload fairings in this view that was there from the crew access tower that's now in the foreground of the frame that you're seeing here on your screen. But notice to the right of the action is a tower very much like the one we saw at Starbase, where they are, I believe, currently still holding on to the super heavy booster. The booster transport was brought out to the pad earlier today, and B-12 will be offloaded. But eventually, the tower that you see here on the right-hand side of your screen will support Starship launches from the Kennedy Space Center. It's an important part of SpaceX's plan to support the Artemis architecture, be able to fuel a tanker in low Earth orbit. That in turn will be able to offload the correct amount of propellant onto
Spacecraft
the
on
human
internal
landing
power.
system version of Starship. As you just heard, the spacecraft is now on internal power, right on schedule.
Center core RP1 load is complete.
Good call for core RP1 loading, the center booster on the Falcon Heavy rocket. Some interesting notes about Europa, the moon, not the spacecraft. Europa, the moon, is one of Jupiter's 4 largest. It has about 10 to 15 mile thick surface layer of a water ice crust combination. It's about 6 times brighter than our moon orbiting our little planet here. Scientists believe there is a relatively deep ocean beneath the ice, and Europa orbits Jupiter once every 3.55 days. Turning now from Europa the moon to Europa the spacecraft, this is some B-roll captured
PY
by
RP1 load
NASA.
is complete.
Good call from Mission Control. This is video from the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, California, of some of the movement of the Europa Clipper spacecraft into the process of testing. In just a little bit, we'll see following this movement here, they'll bring it into a thermal vacuum chamber. I believe that's coming up right after this clip, or maybe after just the one succeeding that one.
Engine chill has started.
Good call on engine chill. Now T minus 6 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. SpaceX is blowing a little bit of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps on the Falcon Heavy's 27 Merlin 1D engines, thermally conditioning them for flight. You can see a time lapse here now in the big box of the Europa Clipper spacecraft being brought into a thermal vacuum test chamber. This sped up about, I believe,
NY
50
RP1 load is
times.
complete.
Call for the side boosters RP1 load is complete. LOX tank filling is still underway. Again, the Europa Clipper spacecraft, with its solar panels unfurled, has a wingspan of about size of a basketball court. Taking a look at the time lapse here of the solar array deployment for the Europa Clipper spacecraft. This is just one of the solar wings as it stretches away from the main body off to the right there. Once Europa Clipper is deployed from the Falcon Heavy's second stage, the actual deployment sequence will happen over the course of about 30 minutes. That starts about a little more than 2.5, around closer to 3 hours is when that deployment sequence will begin of the solar arrays. Comes after
Back retract is starting.
the spacecraft goes through a rotation period to make sure it's evenly warmed on all sides. Just heard the callback for strong back retract. Let's go to a close-up version of the rocket. You see this pad view here. Again, those two side boosters making their 6th and final flight, having most recently supported the launch of the X-37B, which is still on orbit.
NY LOX load is complete.
Hearing from NASA commentator Daryl Nail that there's some chatter on the nets about the second stage. We'll let you know if that's creating any impact to the launch here.
NLM, it's the LD on the
PY
countdown
LOX
net with
load
a final status check.
Yes, LD, this is NLM on countdown 1. NASA spacecraft and the NASA team is go for launch pending resolution of the anomaly.
Copy. Go pending outbrief of the issue being discussed on the anomaly net.
Affirmative.
Center core, lock float is complete.
Listening into some words from Tim Dunn, the Senior Launch Director for NASA's Launch Services Program. That anomaly, giving a little more color to that, saying that they're monitoring some
Stage 2, lock
temperatures
float is complete.
on the Falcon Heavy second stage. As we did hear, the NASA side of the equation is go for launch pending the resolution of this second stage temperature issue. Less than 2 minutes to the planned liftoff. NASA and SpaceX have just a 15-second instantaneous window here for this mission. Targeting the end of that window is the plan.
Ground gas closeouts.
That additional venting you're seeing just beginning now with the ground gas closeouts you heard the call for. All things considered, it's an ideal day for a launch. Picture perfect weather, 95% favorable for liftoff. Less than a minute.
Falcon Heavy is in startup.
Additional updates.
SpaceX Launch Director is go for launch.
And as you heard from the SpaceX Launch Director, they are go for launch. The thermal issue apparently has been resolved by the sounds of it.
30 seconds
Less than 30 seconds. "15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff of the Falcon Heavy rocket, sending Europa Clipper on a journey to the icy world of Europa, the moon of Jupiter. The vehicle has cleared the tower. Falcon Heavy shifting its position, coming up on a minute into flight. Vehicle supersonic, approaching max Q, point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Great work by our tracking team here today. Hear the call for max Q. Coming up, there will be a few different events in fairly rapid succession. The side booster engines will cut off. BECO. The side boosters will separate just a little bit after the 3-minute mark. A minute after that, the first stage main engine cut off. The remaining core booster will cease firing its engines at T plus 4 minutes and 2 seconds. Then the first and second stages will separate. Merlin vacuum engine on the Falcon Heavy second stage will ignite at T plus 4 minutes and 13 seconds. The payload fairings will be deployed at about 4.5 minutes to flight. Now coming up on the 2-minute mark. Now less than a minute to side booster engine cutoff and side booster separation. So far, a smooth ascent of the Falcon Heavy rocket, lifting off for just the 11th time for this launch vehicle. And again, there's 2 side boosters that are set to depart from the center core, making their 6th and final flight on this Europa Clipper mission. Coming up on BECO and then side booster separation.
Booster engine cutoff.
Side booster separation confirmed.
And there's a good release of the side boosters. You can see one of them falling away back to Earth. That center core continuing to burn with its 9 Merlin engines. Now 3.5 minutes into flight. We're coming up on first stage main engine cutoff with those remaining 9 Merlins. That's just a little bit after the 4-minute mark. That'll be followed seconds later by stage separation. And then the Merlin vacuum engine on the Falcon Heavy's second stage will ignite.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
Good calls, seeing that here now on your screen. And that center core falling away as the Merlin vacuum engine now igniting. Some great views of the Earth below through these onboard cameras.
NYPY FTS has saved.
We're coming upon the fairing deployment. You're seeing your first view now here of the Europa Clipper
Fairing
spacecraft.
separation confirmed.
The fairings have fallen away and some really nice lighting.
MVAC ramp to full thrust.
The dish was the high gain antenna when you're looking at the view of the Europa Clipper spacecraft. Europa Clipper is equipped with a 10-foot diameter or 3-meter diameter high gain antenna. That's the big, almost dish-like piece of the spacecraft. When they show us upper stage views, again, I'll point that out. Some great views of the Merlin vacuum engine continuing this first of 2 burns before the deployment of the Europa Clipper spacecraft. This burn lasting until about T plus
Center core FTS has saved.
7 minutes and 53 seconds. Call you heard the center core has been saved. The flight termination system no longer needed at this stage in flight. Obviously, there are still quite a number
Stage
of
2 FTS is saved.
mission milestones still ahead for the Europa Clipper mission and the team supporting it at the Jet Propulsion Lab, but a big weight off their shoulders now that the mission is in fact underway, that launch has taken place. The planetary window to be able to launch the Europa Clipper mission extended out to November 6th, but obviously with each day that ticked by meant less and less potential margin. So having to stand down from their first few days of launch opportunity due to Hurricane Milton and an issue that was overcome during
Stage
what
2 is in
SpaceX
terminal
described
guidance.
as a paranoid scrub work through, which is why they may recall they were originally looking at launching most recently on October 13th before they pivoted to a launch today. They were working through some issues that came up during that paranoia scrub test. Those were resolved. Now the mission is, as you can see, well underway. With the first burn of the Falcon Heavy upper stage now behind us, the next milestone is coming up at T plus 47 minutes, 40 seconds when the engine will come back to life for a burn of about roughly 3 minutes and some change. That will set up the Europa Clipper spacecraft to be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 12 seconds.
Nominal orbit insertion.
Good call for a nominal orbit insertion of the upper stage, carrying, of course, the Europa Clipper spacecraft with it. As we are continuing to watch this coast phase, want to thank a few more folks for your support today. First off, appreciate the 23,000 of you who are still hanging with us. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, allow folks to realize that this mission is still far from over. There's still plenty to talk about and to see as we're awaiting the deployment of the Europa Clipper spacecraft itself. I want to thank Stephen for a $10 super chat. Really appreciate your support, Stephen. Sulfur for Lunch, one of our channel members here with a 20 SDK super chat. Thank you so much, Sulfur. Also want to thank T. Howard for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, T. It says Will Smith is an outstanding narrator. Well, I'll throw in a Robinson in there, and I'll very humbly accept those kind words. Thank you so much for that. Channel member Patty Chichil with a $5 super chat. Appreciate that, Patty, who says, I've learned so much from everyone since I started watching Spaceflight Now. Thank you, everyone. Of course, that is an important part of our goal here with these live launch broadcasts is not only to keep everyone informed and apprised of what's going on a launch front, not just for the entertainment value, of course, of seeing a rocket launch. That's all well and good, but it's important to know it from, of course, a safety perspective for those who live in the area of Brevard County in Central Florida, but also to help expand folks' knowledge and understanding of what's launching, why it's launching, to where it's launching. And so we appreciate your support of our goals here at Spaceflight Now. Valerie Jones, another one of our wonderful channel members, has been with us for now 10 months, saying thanks for your service, boosters. Bon voyage. Well-reasoned Superhawk, marking 11 months as a channel member, saying another great launch. Thank you for all the great coverage. Thank you, well-reasoned. Appreciate your ongoing support. And thanks to another channel member, Chuck Close, for a very generous $25 super chat. Really appreciate that, Chuck. Good to see you this morning, or I guess now early afternoon there on the East Coast. And Kai, also with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Kai. He says, I aspire to work for SpaceX and appreciate the value you add to each launch. Thank you. Well, good luck, Kai, on your SpaceX-bound endeavors. Hope you have good job interviews and that you learn a lot once you get there, or if you end up working with another space company. I hope you enjoyed the journey and the ride along the way. taking a look at our chat here. I want to thank Marcel Sivak for a 10-pound super chat. Thank you, Marcel, who says, great work. Keep going. Well, we will keep going until the deployment of the Europa Clipper spacecraft. So let's go ahead and give you some views. Again, this is part of NASA animation package showing the Europa Clipper spacecraft and a couple of animated flybys around the icy and ocean world, the moon Europa, orbiting obviously the gas giant Jupiter, which you see there coming into view in this animation. On board the Europa Clipper spacecraft, there are 24 engines. The propulsion module on Clipper is described as an aluminum cylinder, which is 10 feet or 3 meters long and 5 feet or 1.5 meters wide. Within that are the 24 aforementioned engines. And about 6,000 pounds or about 2,700 kilograms of fuel in its tanks. Want to listen to some comments from Lori Leshin, who's the director of NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. Let's go ahead and listen in.
Absolutely. And, can you tell us a little bit more about why planetary missions are important in general that we go and study?
Well, it's really about who we are. Even though it's a robot we're sending out into space, it's a very human endeavor to want to explore the unknown, and especially to want to understand where life came from, how we originated, whether there could be other life out there. It's really a fabulous quest, and we're so fortunate to be able to do that through NASA's science program.
Definitely. And, can you tell us a little bit more about the Europa Clipper vault plate and why teams decided to include one?
The vault plate is so wonderful. It builds on a great history. People know about the Voyager Golden Record, which carried messages from Earth into deep space. It's kind of following in that tradition, and to have a special poem written by Ada Limon, the U.S. Poet Laureate, we're over the moon, over Europa, about being able to carry her words with us and to carry 2.6 million names of Earthlings with us as we go explore Europa.
Absolutely, a lot of special mementos on there indeed. Now that launch has occurred, what are some of those key milestones that the teams are going to be looking out for on its way, on Europa's way to Jupiter?
Right. So just today, we'll be looking about 1 hour out is when we separate from the upper stage of the rocket. 3 or 3.5 hours out is very important because that's when our solar arrays, those giant size of a basketball field or a basketball court solar arrays, deploy. We need those because we need power. And then in just 4 months' time, we'll fly by Mars for our first gravity assist. So it's going to be excitement all the way along on our way to Jupiter.
Absolutely. Lori, thank you so much for joining us again here today. Back over to you, Megan.
Now currently T plus 22 minutes, 42 seconds and counting. Again, the next milestone we're looking for is the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine on the Falcon Heavy's second stage. It's coming up at T plus 47 minutes, 40 seconds. That second burn will last about 3 minutes. Then we'll set up the deployment of the Europa Clipper spacecraft, T plus 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 12 seconds. Want to go now to some words from the Europa Clipper project scientist here. Let's go ahead and listen if we can.
A radar that can penetrate through ice like a CAT scan to find liquid water. Super high resolution imaging. We'll be able to look for warm spots, plumes at Europa. All these wonderful techniques that combine together to tell us, could Europa be the kind of place that could support life today?
That is very exciting. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about how scientists will indeed confirm that Europa can support life, like you said?
Sure. We want to understand whether Europa has the so-called ingredients for life. Liquid water, the right chemical elements, and then the energy that could support life. So understanding Europa as a whole can tell us whether those ingredients are there.
And you know, Europa is an ocean world. What kind of ocean are we looking at here? Is it going to be one like Earth that has, you know, a variety of warmer, cooler waters, or are we looking at something entirely different?
Probably not too dissimilar from cold oceans at Earth, Arctic oceans, but here covered with a layer of ice. But the temperature will be similar to Arctic oceans, probably salty, we're not sure how salty. And the pressure at the bottom of Europa's ocean is probably similar to the pressure at the bottom of the deepest point in Earth's oceans. Earth has a lot more gravity, but Europa's ocean is a lot deeper.
That's very exciting. You know, now that Europa Clipper has launched, how does it feel for you, Bob, for the teams and everything now to see this mission on its way?
Just overwhelming. That launch was incredible. And here we are. It's the culmination of so many years of work by so many people. And now we're on our way. And 6 years from now, we'll start getting great data from Europa.
That is so exciting. I know all of us here are very much looking forward to that. Bob, thank you so much for joining us. We'll send it back over to you, Megan.
And actually, Jenny, you and I were just talking. Bob is one of those people who has been working on this for 25 years.
25 years, right? And this is really kind of I know how much this moment means to him.
Currently T plus 30 minutes, 29 seconds and counting. Let's listen to a status update now from NASA's Daryl Nail and a member of the Europa Clipper team.
Then the progress of this coast phase, and we do not have telemetry data currently for it, but we are expecting to pick that back up at our next ground station. We're currently flying over top of close to, as you can see right there, the southern tip of Africa.
Yeah, Daryl, the telemetry and Ascent is coast is picked up by the ground stations across the globe, and we'll be picking up data here shortly. And you know, one of the new things that we'll be doing with Falcon Heavy as we get ready to start up stage 2 for its second burn, we'll be using the NASA TDRS network, the tracking data and relay system, to be able to pick up that start of stage 2 once that comes about. So that's a first time we'll be using that for Falcon Heavy, and things are looking great. So we are hearing that we just got at AOS from our Cape Town ground station, and we were watching telemetry. It just came back on the screen, so things are looking really good. Data that has just popped up for the orbital coast looks good from a velocity standpoint and altitude. So this mission continuing to look good during this coast phase.
Right, we've regained, again, our telemetry now. We can see exactly where the second stage is and the spacecraft. All is good now, and you mentioned going to fly under TDRS when we lose all ground stations, so that we're going to use a satellite to keep track. All right, so we're back online now, and we'll send it back to Megan and Jenny.
We're now T plus 35 minutes and counting. At this point in the flight, we are now about 12-ish minutes away from the second burn of the Falcon Heavy's upper stage. Again, that burn set to last a little more than 3 minutes in total. So far, with the exception of that brief pocket of time where they weren't getting telemetry data from we believe, the ground station in Bermuda, things have been progressing fairly smoothly with the flight of the Falcon Heavy upper stage, with the periodic views we're getting of the Europa Clipper spacecraft up top. So taking a look at the live telemetry data there on the big box on your screen, seeing the upper stage has now finished passing over the southern tip of the continent of Africa. Get some good views there of the Falcon Heavy second stage, and there is Europa Clipper itself for just a brief second. As we're continuing to watch these views, I want to thank Psychonaut69, one of our wonderful channel members, for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, Psychonaut. And to our newest channel member, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Want to go now to an interview in progress with the Europa Clipper Systems Manager.
Characterizations,
Listen in.
deployments, and checkouts of the subsystems and instruments. Some will be required prior to our first trajectory correction maneuver in about 3 weeks. We call that part Flight System Characterization Part 1. And then the vast majority of the remaining checkouts will be performed after that. And that'll put us kind of near the end of the calendar year. After that, we'll be performing a flyby of Mars on March 1st, 2025.
Speaking of flybys, Europa Clipper will have flybys of Earth and Mars. So how does that help it reach its final destination, Jupiter?
So we use planetary flybys to perform what you would consider to be like gravity-fueled maneuvers. The slingshot effect you get by flying by a planet or a moon gives us essentially the ability to add energy to the spacecraft trajectory and to put the trajectory in a more optimal direction. So to get to Jupiter, we'll perform flybys of Mars next year, and then one of the Earth in December of 2026, prior to arriving in Jupiter in 2030. Of course, once we're in the Jupiter system, we'll be performing many flybys of Galilean moons. And you can think of every flyby of Europa as not just a scientific opportunity, but an opportunity to tailor and craft the trajectory to set up the ground track for the next flyby.
Yeah, so tell us about that. Like, once it reaches Jupiter, what will the paths look like?
So after orbit capture, we'll be proceeding with a series of Galilean moon flybys to reduce the size of the orbit, the capture orbit, to one that's more in resonance with Europa's orbit. So about 11 months after orbit capture in April of 2030, we'll perform our first Europa flyby in March of 2031. And by around Memorial Day weekend in that same year, we'll be in full swing performing flybys about every 3 weeks.
Well, Al, thank you so much for your time. Megan, back to you.
And back, Jill.
Now T plus 39 minutes, 56 seconds and counting. Good call for MVAC chill. They're thermally conditioning that Merlin vacuum engine in preparation for its ignition, which is coming up here in just a little bit. That second burn, again, set to begin at T plus 47 minutes, 40 seconds or thereabouts, burning for about a 3-minute duration. Of course, the Europa Clipper spacecraft isn't the only Jupiter-bound spacecraft out there right now. Back about a year and a half ago on April 14th of 2023, the European Space Agency launched the JUICE mission, the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, lifted off on April 14th on an Ariane 5 rocket. It already performed its lunar Earth flyby, which happened back in August. It's coming up next year in August on a Venus flyby. That's again August of 2025. It'll make another swing back by Earth in September of 2026. Make one last pass by our little blue planet here in January of 2029, and then make its arrival at Jupiter in July of 2031. So while it launched sooner, it's going to be taking a little bit of a longer jaunt to get out to Jupiter. While it's there, it will be making observations of not only Europa, which will be the sole focus of the Europa Clipper mission, but JUICE will be taking a look at and checking out the 3 ocean-bearing moons, according to the European Space Agency: Ganymede, Callisto, and of course, Europa. Now T plus 42 minutes, 22 seconds and counting.
MVAC chill.
The second stage of the rocket.
Now T plus
Europa
47
Clipper,
minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Let's listen to another update from Daryl Nail.
30 seconds. Getting ready to relight. This is a longer burn than the first burn.
Yeah, this is the burn that will get us into that ITO, or interplanetary transfer orbit, allowing Europa Clipper to be separated and get ready for its Earth assist maneuver. And there we just heard the call for MVAC ignition. The engine was chilled down prior to this, and ignition has happened, and the second burn is continuing on.
So this is a 3-minute and 21-second burn of the second stage. If you're familiar with the amazing views that we have at this point, then you know that we've got the camera on the second stage. However, we are not expecting to see that view for this particular burn, and there's an important reason for that, and that is because we've been on ground stations leading up into this point, but for the duration of this second burn, we are pulling data through the TDRS network. The TDRS network, a legacy satellite system in geo orbit that is going to help us out fill in the gap so we can at least pull down the important telemetry of what is going on.
Yeah, we're seeing the telemetry coming through, and things are looking good on the telemetry. And but as you stated, we can't process that video through there from that aspect, and things continue to go for this burn.
Yes, the TDRS system covering 90% of this burn 2. TDRS, of course, standing for Tracking Data and Relay Satellite Network. 90% of the burn will be covered by TDRS, but it's a much lower data rate than it is from the ground station. It's roughly on the order of 20 kilobits per second. If you compare that to your home internet connection, it's the pipe is about 5,000 times smaller.
Yeah, we have to choose what data we send. So we want to send the vehicle telemetry so we can see what's happening from a stage 2 velocity and altitude, and bandwidth for video takes up a lot more. So we opt to get the launch vehicle data, and things continue to look good for this burn.
Anyone who has downloaded video onto their phone knows about bandwidth. You got to have a good connection. You got to have a cell phone that's on a wide connection in order to pull down video. So we will not have video for any part of this second burn. Also, the spacecraft team is not getting any of the telemetry being pulled down because, again, as you said, there's a high priority on the communications about where that rocket stage is.
Yeah, absolutely. And this burn continues, and we're about 30 seconds away from the end of this burn, and we'll see how things continue to move. But we're watching the telemetry here, Daryl, and you can see that the acceleration of stage 2 and velocity continue to increase as stage 2 is performing its job to get Europa Clipper into its orbit.
MVAC engine cut off.
There you have the cutoff. The second burn is complete. And we just caught some video of the right there at the end of the second burn, and we've got some results there. Everything looking good.
Yeah, TDRS network did its job. We just switched over to ground station, and we were able to pick up that
nominal orbital insertion.
Nominal orbital insertion has just been reported, and stage 2 looks good. So our next event, Daryl, will be spacecraft separation. Very excited for that, and I know everybody's looking forward to that with the successful launch today.
We are looking forward to seeing Europa Clipper go off into space off that second stage, but in the meantime, we'll send it back to Megan and
Good views now of the Europa Clipper spacecraft as ground station connection has been reestablished, as the upper stage is passing over Australia at the moment, or just north of it. Now T plus 54 minutes, 7 seconds and counting. Again, with that second burn now in the rearview mirror, we're looking forward to the last piece of this pie that involves the SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket, which is spacecraft separation, which is set to take place at about T plus 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 12 seconds. So we're still getting some great views of the Europa Clipper spacecraft itself. Once the spacecraft is separated, acquisition of signal is anticipated some handful of minutes after that. Taking a look at the Deep Space Network, this is a live feed coming in and being shared by NASA right now. Oh, well, actually, this is that was Stevens doing, bringing in the Deep Space Network to show you what it's communicating with. Now less than 7 minutes to spacecraft separation.
We're looking good so far. The telemetry we're seeing looks like the coast again is going well. We expect the spacecraft and the second stage to start to go into a little bit of a roll, and that's intentional, Mick.
Yeah, for thermal protection, to make sure that Europa Clipper stays cool and gets going, and we get that thermal roll that's going on. But everything's looking good, and the initial data we got from stage 2 performance looked really good and nominal for that second burn. So we're definitely looking forward to Europa Clipper separation here shortly, as we can see this camera view of Europa Clipper on the front of the SpaceX Stage 2 launch vehicle.
Yeah, that's a great shot of the spacecraft going out the forward end. Europa Clipper, the largest spacecraft that NASA has ever built and sent into space on a planetary mission.
There we see the camera view of the MVAC-D that did its job in the shutdown, and the picture
Flight
of
nav MSA.
Europa Clipper on the
Go
front
ahead, Nav
of the Stage 2.
We received the orbital parameter message from SpaceX
altitude.
as expected after SECO 2, and we'll evaluate when we get data.
Copy, Nav MSA, thank you.
Getting ready for separation in roughly 5 minutes.
Would you like me to brief the post-separation expectations?
Now we are having
please, go
video
ahead.
signal appear and then disappear. We
So
do know
after
that with the spacecraft doing that thermal roll,
after separation from the launch vehicle, the autonomous behavior is going to begin.
Yeah, absolutely. We're on
the
ground
earliest
station
initial acquisition time
tracking,
will be after
and
the Toledo
as
warm-up
it slightly
completes, 5
moves
minutes
around,
after
we
separation.
lose the
During that 5
connection
minutes,
a little
we
bit,
have
but we're getting great data so
things that are
far
happening in the launch
as the
behavior.
vehicle continues
Both
to
of the
perform
digital
well.
sun sensors will be being
we really
turned
want to
on.
be locked in
The
at
IMU will
T
be
plus 1
initialized
hour
and the
and
proxy
2
vector
minutes
established.
and 32 seconds.
Then we
That's
will
the current time that we have for the separation the
configure
Europa
our
Clipper
for radio
spacecraft.
transmission on
And that is a
LTA3,
big moment,
switch
and
to
we want to
RCD
be able to see
24.
that because, as we've
At
seen
that point,
in some
we
past
will
NASA
transition
missions,
system mode to
it really
launch
looks
post-step,
impressive to
and
see
that's
that
when we
spacecraft
expect
going
alarms
off
to clear.
into
All
its
of this is
destination.
happening in that 5
Yeah, and
minutes
this being
when
the
we are
largest
nodding
planetary
calm
spacecraft
when
that
the
we've
twig is
built,
still
it's
warming
just
up.
going to be very
At
cool
that
to
point,
see this
we'll vent and
separation
prime the
go.
propellant line.
And you know, we heard
and
Jenny
then,
and some of the team talk about it, but
the
it
5
just
minutes will be
blows me
completed, and
away.
we
The
could
30-meter,
potentially start to
you
get
know, fairing
initial
of the
acquisition,
solar rays. Wish we
in
could
that
see
time
that and
between
all, but
5 minutes and
this
20
mission
minutes
is
when
just so
we
excited to
are
have so many people behind it, and we were
looking
just
for
looking
initial
forward
acquisition.
after this
We'll
successful
also
launch
be
today. We're
nulling
going
our
to get to this
tip-off
major
rates,
milestone of
completing a sun
separation.
search,
Things
turning
continue
to
to
the
look
sun
good
and
for
putting
that
the
from
sun in
that
the
aspect.
XY
We've had a
plane,
lot of
starting
people,
our
Daryl,
rotation,
over the
the
years
axis
work
rotation,
on this. I'm going to give a
for
special
our
shout
thermal
out to
roll.
one of my own, my flight
So once
analysis
we have
division
initial
chief, Mr. Mike
acquisition,
Carney.
we'll be looking to quickly
He has been
establish where we're
working
at
on a
in launch
Europa
phase.
mission for at least 25 years in his
for all
career. He
stations. We have a couple other
started out
periodic
as a
points during the
trajectory
launch
analyst
phase
for
where
a
we'll have
Europa
activity
mission
brief the
way
next few
back
steps
when
so
at
that we can all
Lewis.
stay aware
And
of
when
what
he
the
came to
spacecraft will do.
LSP, he's worked on
Telecom
Europa off and on over the years.
and
So
DDM, two
shout out
requests.
to you, Mike, for the
Once
great
we
job,
have,
and the rest of the team on Europa
separation
Clipper
and
today.
we are waiting for signal acquisition. Telecom, I would like you to be the reporter that we have carrier lock. And DDM, when you see a packet come
We just
down
passed the
from the
1 hour
spacecraft, I'd
mark
like you to report
of
that on.
flight
Copy.
for Europa Clipper and Falcon Heavy. Second stage. As you can see from this trajectory, Mick, it's going away from Earth.
Yeah, this is that interplanetary transfer orbit that we talked about. You know, that first burn got us into that park orbit around Earth. And this second stage, second burn on second stage did a great job of getting us on that way as we get ready to separate Europa Clipper to get ready for those flybys, to get those gravity assists to get out there to the Europa
I just
moon.
want to remind you that in step
Things
2-2 of the count-up
continue to look
procedure,
very well on the stage
separation plus 1 minute,
performance
we have a briefing to the
as it
DSN
coasts
and
through,
SSD
getting ready for
to
separation.
prepare them for initial acquisition.
Trajectory looks nominal.
Flight GNC1.
And Europa Clipper is going to
wanted
be
to give you an
deployed
update
in a
on
very
the INU
high
VDRs we've been looking
radiation
into.
environment.
We did hear back from the situation
watched
room
our
that we saw a
broadcast
number
today,
of the
learned a
DD3
lot about the
assay
high
words,
radiation,
report the air
extremely
conditions.
high radiation
Two of them,
environment in its
bit 16 and 17,
destination, but
report
it's
gyro and
also in
Excel
a
errors.
high
Those are
radiation
the ones we had
area
previously
right
seen
now,
in vibe testing,
as
system
this
vibe testing,
deployment
and
is
for,
in the
expected.
Van Allen
The other
radiation
ones, which were
belts.
words 21 through 24,
Yeah, we talked
are
one of the
reporting
things
gyro errors.
that we
did
had
not
to
previously
monitor
see
today
that in the
during
vibe testing,
today's
but the
launch
hardware
was
cog, you did
solar
report that
proton
would be
flux.
consistent with a
Team
dynamic
had to keep an
environment,
eye
and we'd
on
expect those
that
to go away
for solar
when the
flares and
environment
things
dies
going on
down.
to make sure
Copy,
we
GNC,
heard
thank
we
you.
heard
And
earlier about the
between yourself and
special
the
radiation
GNC
area where the
team in the
electronics
back
are
room.
and
Do we have the data from the vibe testing
spacecraft.
available
And so
to us and up so that folks can
solar
query it quickly if we need to do
proton
some
flux
comparisons between what happened
went
in
very
vibe and
well
what's happening
today,
here?
and we got this launch
I
off.
don't think we have it
Things
immediately
looking
handy,
really good.
but we
We're
can
about
get
a minute
it,
away
but
from
probably takes a
payload
little priority
separation.
than just
Expected
watching the
payload
live telemetry.
separation.
It's about to start coming
Things
in.
continue to look good as the
GNC.
stage 2 altitude continues to
Flight GDS.
increase.
Go.
Velocity
Just
has
wanted
a
to
steady
confirm the
state
alarms
now
were deployed,
for stage
and we
2.
confirmed that they were read
Things looking
by
really
chilldown.
good for this portion of the mission.
Also noting on the
Getting
net
close
that
now.
Chill Monitor Prime is going to toggle between 5 different session IDs, and that's expected, one for each
Less than
VCID
30
for
seconds
the,
away
for
from
DSS-34.
separation. There you see the Europa
Copy, GDS,
spacecraft. Those massive solar panels that you were talking about all stacked
phase.
together.
Go phase.
I had one follow-up for GNC when it's the time.
Can we hold phase?
Yeah.
This is a big moment for the program, for NASA, APL, and JPL. Let's watch.
Europa Clipper, separation confirmed.
And there you go. NASA's Europa Clipper probe, embarking on a long-awaited mission to study Jupiter's icy moon Europa. And what a sight, man.
That is absolutely gorgeous to see Europa Clipper on its way. Successful deployment from stage 2. Falcon Heavy performed very well today. Teams behind us are clapping and enjoying. That is a beautiful picture.
All stations via the video, we can see that Clipper has successfully separated. Please say goodbye to Clipper on its way to Europa.
Now that voice you heard just there is the Europa Clipper flight director, Pranay Mishra. He's with the mission support team.
Okay, all stations, we are waiting for sign of initial acquisition. Again, Telecom will confirm when we have carrier lock, and DDM will let us know when they see the first packet down.
You can see the second stage and the spacecraft just hit orbital sunrise, fully illuminated by the sun coming over the Earth. And as you just heard the flight director say, they are now going to be monitoring for an acquisition of signal.
Yes, this will be the first time the spacecraft gets information. Looking forward for that.
The hope is that they would get it in the next few seconds. We're now looking at a split screen. On your left, you see Europa Clipper. On your right, this is telemetry coming. Or actually, this is the ground station looking for a spike, looking for a handshake with the spacecraft. And we expect to see that in the form of a blip.
Daryl, as you say, they expect that here in a few seconds, but it can happen in a few seconds or anywhere from 15 minutes from now. So the team is closely monitoring this and looking for that, and we're hoping that we can gain AOS here very shortly.
Yes, there's a broad range of times for which AOS is expected.
Flight GNC. Go.
Just wanted to comment on the video that we could see that the sun was on the negative y side of the spacecraft for very low visible separation rates, and the negative z-axis was pointed at Earth, so this should be favorable for comp. Copy, GNC, thank you.
An acknowledgement from the team that that sunlight could help things out. They're looking to warm up the amplifiers.
Go, phase.
Sorry, I missed the session IDs for our SA session GDS. Can you repeat those for me?
We did not call them out on yet, but there are 5 session IDs that it will cycle through. GDS, if you note those session IDs in your cache report, folks go there. Take a look.
So they got 2 radios there that they are warming up. And once they get warm enough, they'll be able to send a signal transmitting down to the deep space network. And that's where JPL, the team that you see there in California, is awaiting to receive that signal. Basically a handshake saying, hey, I'm here, I'm good. The bigger telemetry and the more the data about how it's doing will come down later.
Go.
Did we get confirmation that the alarm file was deployed?
That's affirmative.
Do we have the time at which that deployment was complete?
GDS, do you have a specific time for when that alarm file deployment was complete?
17:05:06.
Systems, you copy that time?
Copy, thank you.
Again, that's Europa Clipper Flight Director Pranay Mishra leading his team. Also, a partner in this mission is the Applied Physics Laboratory, their team on console as well. We're continuing to monitor the search for a signal. And I believe we have it.
Right.
There it is.
Flight, this is... Go, Telecom. Flight, this is Cal. We're seeing the signal on the open loop receiver. Copy, Telecom.
And there you have it. Confirmation of signal from the spacecraft, Europa Clipper. The room there at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory erupting in applause. These teams have worked a long time. You've got some high fives.
Flight, I got data on SSC. Copy, Telecom.
Flight, this is Telecom. Looks like 12 kilosymbols per second as expected.
Copy, Telecom.
Solid data rate.
We're in lock. Flight, this is Telecom. We're in lock.
Copy, Telecom.
Flight systems.
Go, systems.
We have telemetry. We received good samples, and our displays are lighting up.
Copy, systems. Initial hack is confirmed.
And now they just locked in full telemetry from the spacecraft. Another big milestone.
Flight prop. Go, prop.
We are vented and primed.
Thank you, prop.
The propulsion system now is ready.
this is Nav.
Go Nav.
We see Doppler data.
Copy Nav.
Break. Flight systems.
Go.
We're reporting status that both branches failed to vent. Can please confirm if venting occurred successfully?
I was about to do that. The pressures are good, but we are seeing the valve venting flag. We're taking a look right now.
Copy Prop. Thank you.
Flight GNC.
Go GNC.
We do see, there's the telemetry just came in too. We do see that we are already in the mode GNC 3RS tracks on point, and with the Z-axis rate is consistent with the Z-axis roll.
Copy. Thank you, GNC.
Flight FP.
Go FP.
So the particular condition about both branch failing venting does not trigger a monitor, and we have no indication that anything tripped, so it just moved down to priming.
Copy.
Can hear you, Sammy. Copy.
Branch of that we're following here.
Yes, the branch through the launch behavior is that if both branches fail venting, the behavior moves on to and attempts priming. So if that is successful, we could get into tracks on point like we're seeing here. Depending on the cause of the both branches failing venting, which we'll look for prop to confirm more details on.
Copy activity. Activity as you see signs of the launch behavior continuing, please call it out.
Yes, if we're flight this activity.
Go ahead.
Being in our tracks on point at this point, we are waiting the hour thermal roll, so we should all be looking for signs of being in the thermal roll right now.
Copy activity.
Yeah, flight GNC, just to confirm it again, we are in the thermal roll right now. And so GNC sees that we have already successfully found the sun, done a slew to sun point, and initiated the Z-axis roll. So good indication that GNC is using the engine successfully.
Copy GNC. Do you have an estimate on the start time of that thermal roll?
We're working that right now. Get that back to you.
Thank you. And activity, when you have the telemetry in step 2-8 or can confirm the telemetry in step 2-8, please let me know.
Flight C.
Go ahead, B.
Is Power seeing anything in the thermal roll? Do we see any change?
Go ahead, Power.
Stand by.
Now T plus 1 hour, 11 minutes, 47 seconds and
Flight
counting.
activity.
What?
Go activity.
The holding mechanism that allows that solar array to expand, and then that'll bring them power to the spacecraft that'll get them on their way.
Yeah, 30 meters solar. That's just impressive from that aspect. And Daryl, again, a great launch today, great separation. I say to Jenny on the host desk, awesome. Hope you're happy. Hope the JPL's team happy. We at LSP are so proud to provide you with SpaceX, a great launch today. Thanks for being with us. And Daryl, as usual, thanks for having me on board for this launch. This was an exciting one.
Well, we appreciate having you, Mick. Thank you for your expertise and your knowledge and insight in this mission. It is always helpful to help us understand what's going on. So thank you very much. And that'll wrap it up for us. So we'll send it now back to the host desk and Megan and Jenny.
Yeah, thank you so much.
As we were saying, there has been quite a bit of activity leading up to and now following the separation of the Europa Clipper spacecraft from the Falcon Heavy upper stage, taking a live look at the data from the Deep Space Network, noting that the ground station in Canberra, Australia, acquired signal. there was a little bit of communication that we were hearing before the loops were unfortunately cut. It sounded like they were still working through some data and making sure that they had a full scope of understanding of how the spacecraft was operating, but it did, from what we were able to hear, sound like the propulsion system is working and they have been able to initiate the roll procedure, which will begin to warm the spacecraft up, and that process will last about 3 or so hours before they get ready to begin the deployment of the Europa Clipper's solar panels. The deployment process will take about 30 minutes in total. Going to go now to Tim Larson, who's the Europa Clipper deputy manager. Let's listen to his
test the
words
entire
here.
system to make sure this system is now able to do everything it needs to do on the way to Jupiter and once we get there in our orbits around Europa. This is every person here and that's contributed to this have all contributed to making history today.
And we have acquisition of signal and telemetry. Can you tell us about that data that you've received?
Yes, that's the data that tells us the spacecraft, the state of the spacecraft. It tells us what equipment is on and off, the temperatures, voltages, currents, software messages that tell us what's going on. So all of that informs the team in the MSA, and they can now start evaluating the state of health of the spacecraft and its readiness to keep going.
And we're celebrating now, but there is still a lot of work ahead. Can you walk us through what the next few weeks look like for Europa Clipper?
Yeah, this is going to be a busy time for the team because now that the spacecraft is flying on its own, we'll go through a series of activities where we check out every bit of equipment on the spacecraft, make sure that every subsystem is working as it's supposed to, and then we'll start a series of activities checking out the instruments on the spacecraft. And we have a couple of key deployments that come up right after that, deploying the boom for the magnetometers and deploying the antennas for the radar instruments. So it's going to be a busy few weeks.
Exciting times ahead. Tim, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you. This is so exciting for the entire team.
And that'll do it here at
Of course, we'll continue to track the progress of the Europa Clipper mission throughout the course of the solar panel deployment coming up in a few hours here. And of course, the mission, which is set to last several years as it begins its journey to its namesake moon orbiting Jupiter. Before we go ahead and wind things down today, though, I want to thank Callistia Lee, one of our wonderful moderators and channel members, for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Callistia. And to our newest 5 channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. And as we get ready to close things out, I'm going to go ahead and take a turn, look at our mission stats as they currently stand. Now that there's been a good liftoff of the Falcon Heavy rocket and a good deployment of the Europa Clipper spacecraft in an acquisition of signal. So far, the mission. Here's our look at the mission stats as they currently stand. This was the sixth and final flight of Falcon boosters B-1064 and 1065. This was the first and only flight of the core booster 1089. This was the 11th Falcon Heavy rocket launch to date, the second Falcon Heavy of 2024, I should say the second and final. According to SpaceX, there are a trio of Falcon Heavy launches for commercial customers that are on the board for 2025. So we won't be devoid of sites of Falcon Heavy launches for too long. This was the 324th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 99th launch of 2024, including, of course, the Falcon 9, the Falcon Heavy, and 3 launches of their Starship vehicle. This was SpaceX's 90th orbital launch from Pad 39A to date, and the 183rd orbital launch from Pad 39A as well. Also worth noting that with this mission, SpaceX has launched a total of 96 orbital flights so far this year. That matches the total number of launches, orbital launches, that they had in all of 2023. So with the pending Falcon 9 launch of the Starlink 10-10 mission in the overnight hours, they will have eclipsed their launch total from last year. It's illustrated by the bar chart. Here's where we currently stand. SpaceX right on the cusp of breaking their record. Of course, there are no recovery stats since they did not recover either the side boosters or the center core. So we're going to go ahead and skip past that. Moving on to some industry stats. This was the 70th orbital launch from Florida this year. Actually, that's a typo. This was the 69th orbital launch from Florida this year. 103rd from U.S. soil, the 113th from a U.S. rocket company, the 184th around the world. 6 launch failures so far on the year. Here's where our pie chart currently stands. And nearly an hour and a half into this mission so far, we're going to go ahead and close it out right here. It's been a long week and weekend heading into the work week of launch coverage for really all the activities that SpaceX has been occupied with. Of course, it's kicked off with our coverage of the Flight 5 mission of SpaceX's Starship here in southern Texas. It moved on to the launch of Europa Clipper that we just had, and take a look at now just outside of where we are here. You can see the Super Heavy boosters still on the orbital launch mount. The booster transport vehicle was moved out to the pad there, the pad area. So likely we'll see the offloading of that booster sometime in the near future. You can keep your eyes on activities here at Starbase thanks to our friends over at Lab Padre. You can find these and other views over on our 24-hour live stream channel that is Launchpad Live. Again, coming up, we do have a pair of Falcon 9 launches that are currently on the docket for the overnight hours and heading into pre-dawn tomorrow. Currently on the schedule are Starlink 10-10 set to lift off back over in Florida, not from this pad, but from Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. That launch window opens up at 1:26 a.m. Eastern, so we're keeping an eye out for SpaceX's latest on the finalized T0 with that. Just double checking to see if they've published anything. They have not. Yes, the window opens up at 1:26, and we'll see if that ends up being the T0. Weather for that launch looks pretty darn good. I believe it's still just 5% chance of violating weather, or in other words, 95% go conditions for that launch from Pad 40. That'll be followed up a few hours after that, if all moves smoothly, with the launch of the Starlink 9-7 mission over at Vandenberg Space Force Base. That mission set to lift off at 1:03 a.m. Pacific is when that window opens, 4:03 a.m. Eastern, 08:03 UTC. So lots of Starlinks set to fly overnight tonight. We hope you take the time to join us when SpaceX is ready to proceed with those launches. We'll be ready with live launch coverage. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this live stream. Really appreciate all of you who have been with us throughout the course of launch activities to this point, and we hope to see you back here again in the very near future. I want to thank Psychonaut69 for gifting one last membership. Appreciate you hitting that at the buzzer. I want to thank our wonderful moderators in the live chat, Callistia Lee and Aussie Space Girl, for helping to hold it down. A big thanks, as always, to our wonderful channel member community. Y'all know who you are. Our thanks to Michael Kane for helping to shoot this launch. We've posted a few of his photos already on our X account, formerly Twitter. You could follow Michael at MD Kane Jr. Be sure to follow Adam Bernstein at ABernNYC. He's been busy collecting his cameras from around the area of the Hopper vehicle down there at Starbase. Looking forward to seeing the photos he collected from there, and you can follow him again at ABernNYC, and we'll be sure to share some of his photos to the main Spaceflight Now account as well. Thanks to Stephen Young for running the technical operations of all of these broadcasts, and most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you're watching from in your little neck of the woods around the world. Again, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out the digital door and give this video a like so folks can find it on a live launch coverage replay if they'd like to go back and revisit this coverage in the future. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.